Welcome to QPO.
Welcome to my channel. This is where I upload videos. Usually it's once a week, typically on Thursdays. Today I'm going to make a costume. Not just any costume. I'm going to make the Man with No Names costume. This has been an iconic costume my entire life and it is fantastic. There's only a couple of issues. One, it's iconic, so I need to do a good job or else why bother. Two, I've never sewn before. And three, there's a lot of leather, and I've never sewn before. Let's get started. Pants. The pants that Clint Eastwood wears in the movies are a straight cut black denim jeans. I think they're Levi's. I actually have a pair of these. However, it's a really thick denim, and I can't actually run it under the sewing machine. So instead, I'm actually going to alter a pair of dress pants that I have and just make them a little bit tighter on me. I've never sewn before, but hemming should be relatively easy. Hemming pants 101. The first step is pin and mark. You run a line of pins down your leg, mimicking the seam that you want to cut. Doing this to yourself is harder than it looks. After you finish pinning, then you turn it inside out, lay it flat against your other pant leg, and take a piece of chalk and outline a new seam on the second pant leg. Then you take the chalk and outline the pins, take the pins out, and you're ready to sew. Okay, so sewing is tricky and there's all kinds of shit and it is infuriating. However, it's more or less you line it up with the sew a little bit, backstitch, sew a lot, backstitch, cut, you're good. Sewing. Alright, so the pants are done. We're good. They don't look freakish, and it's not irritating my skin. They're looking straight enough. I feel like fucking Clint Eastwood from the waist down. Minus the gun and the belt. But either way, I'm happy. Now that the pants are down, I gotta modify my dress shirt. What's typically worn in the movies is a light blue pinstripe shirt that has a rounded collar, and it runs a little bit short on the cuffs and a little bit short on the stomach. I went to Value Village and found a light blue shirt for about $5. It wasn't pinstripe. There was a couple other pinstriped shirts there, but it just didn't feel right. This, when I put it on, it fit relatively well. The only issues I have is the collar isn't rounded and the cuffs are perfect length, but I really need them shorter for this costume. Hopefully those are fixable issues. So let's get started on my shirt. So again, first step is to outline, cut, pin, and then I get to start sewing. This is a little bit trickier though, because I am using the rounded collar. It both needs to be gradual and it can't be weirdly shaped, so the pinning is quite a bit more intricate. First I need to take a marker, outline it, cut it, fold it in, pin it, and then I gotta start sewing. Alright, so sewing. This is in no way like the pants. I now need to sew with the pins in there, which means I go about half a centimeter pull-up pin, half a centimeter pull-up pin. It is mind-numbing. Alright, the sewing's done. I didn't break the machine. It's a little bit lopsided on both sides, but it's not all that noticeable. The next step is I need to take these sleeves and make them quite a bit shorter. This shirt's about the perfect size for me, but if you look in the movie, his shirt is actually quite a bit shorter, and it actually has a unique effect, because every movement he makes, you can see his wrist and how it moves. So it really emphasizes his reaches for the guns and everything like that. So I really like that feature. What I'm thinking about doing is I'm gonna take an elastic. I'm gonna sew the elastic down here and up here so that it naturally pulls a little bit. I might just do it with some string as well, depending on how much force I actually needed to do that. So I couldn't find any elastic or any string that really wouldn't irritate my skin. I do, however, have a cut up piece of old bike tube. I happen to have this saved up. It's actually a pretty good material to work with. So now it's just a matter of cutting up to the length that I want and hand sewing it into the sleeves. It works. The elastics have been attached and the sleeves are significantly shorter. Alright, so the shirt is done. I don't know if I'm getting used to it or it's not that noticeable, but the collar really doesn't look that bad to me. I don't really notice the difference in roundedness. Especially since like it's going to be folded out and it's going to be ratty anyways. I don't think it's going to matter. And the elastics work. It is falling a little bit lower than I want it to be, but if I pull it up, it stays up. It's a definite success. I'm done the easy, basic stuff, and I'm starting to move on to the little more difficult part. Alright, so this project's coming along quite nicely. However, the next part is the make or break for the cowboy costume. The cowboy hat, the most important part of any cowboy costume, it's what people identify you by. Even if I fuck up this costume entirely, if I have that hat, people can still say, oh, he's a cowboy. And if you're talking about iconic props in movies, this is up there with his gun. His hat was actually from his TV show Rawhide and brought over. It has this black leather band around it with a very beautiful, intricate design. It also has a shit ton of bullet holes in it from, for a few dollars more. The issue is real cowboy hats are really expensive. So instead I bought a felt one for like $8. However, it's one, it's too big for me. Two, it has a stupid ass red ribbon around it, and it's god awful. So the first step is probably going to be the easiest step for me. It's just cut out the bullet hole from the hat. Alright, so now that I cut it out, it's time to burn plastic or felt or I don't know what that's made out of. Either way, I'm sure it'll smell bad. And I'm going to use the bike tube again because it's there and it worked well enough on the shirt. I'm just going to cut off a little piece of it, wrap it around the hat, and hot glue it to the hat itself. And I'm hoping it's going to be good enough. Alright, so the next step is, this hat has an annoying elastic around it that every single time I move my head, it's rubbing up against it and it's driving me nuts. So I'm just going to cut that off and just hope it's not too big for me. Okay, so the hat's done. My opinion of it is it's passable. Well, it's not exact at all. It looks felt. The feel, the size of it is not great. I'm relatively pleased with the bullet hole in the strap. That works well. I just really wish I could get it to fit my head bigger, but I'm worried that because it is molded, that as soon as I cut it, it just will fold weirdly and it just wouldn't sit right. Alright, so the hat's done, the shirt's done, the pants done. Really, the only thing I have left to do is the belt. In the movies, the belt is largely understated, but it really is a key part of the costume. If you're familiar at all with cowboys or anything like that, any sort of gunslinger, you know that they have two different belts. They have a belt to keep their pants up and a belt to hold the holster for their gun. So really what I'm focusing on is that second belt because that needs to be pristine. So when I went out to buy the shirt and the pants at Value Village, I also went out and looked at a couple of leather belts, and I found something that was perfect. It had a brass buckle, it had a very cool design sewn in it, and I saw it and I just needed to purchase it right away. The only issue is I didn't try it on and it is far too small for me. However, I have a solution to this issue. I'm just going to take a piece of an old ratty belt that I had laying around, and I'm going to cut a chunk out of it, sew it into my belt to extend it about 6 inches. And I'm going to make it longer, like so. The first step is to mark and measure. It's the same thing with everything else. However, because this is leather, it's not that forgiving. So I really need to be precise with my cuts and make sure that they're all straight, especially since they're all sewn together and the ends need to sort of match up fairly well. The second step. This is my first time ever sewing leather, and I made probably what is kind of the rookie mistake. I bought the wrong kind of thread for it. I knew that I need a special kind of wax thread. However, I thought the thicker the thread, the better and easier it would be to sew with. I don't know why I thought this. It couldn't be more wrong. I bought special sewing needles for leather working, and this thread doesn't fit into any of them. So now I have to go and use the awl and just sort of weave it in without any guide or anything like that. Just sort of force my way in, and it took a lot longer than it should have. Particularly with these belts, which tend to be kind of thick. It certainly is time consuming and it hurts my hands to hell, but I think it was worth it. Okay, belt is finally done. I was trying to test her out. The finished product is so good. I'm so pleased with it. It by far is my favorite part of the costume. And that's mostly because it actually looks like it's well done. It actually is kind of strong, and I think it adds character to the belt that it didn't have before. I think it's definitely the peak of this video. I should say this costume is definitely missing a few things. The biggest thing being his gun. Now, I didn't include his gun for 2 reasons. One, his gun is probably the most iconic part of the costume, and there's so much detail in it, and if I even try to replicate it, I just feel like I wouldn't be doing it justice at all. And 2, I'm actually going to be wearing this costume out on the town, and I can't be really walking around with a gun in my holster, because that can just complicate things relatively easy, especially when I'm trying to get into bars and stuff like that. For the holster itself, I was planning on making one for this costume. However, I just kind of ran out of time. Leatherworking took a lot longer than I thought I was going to, so I just didn't end up having the time to be able to make the holster. The shoes are kind of due to my budget. I couldn't afford a real cowboy hat. I sure as fuck can't afford real cowboy boots. So instead I just have a pair of leather shoes with heels on them. As a whole, I'm really pleased with this. This is my first time ever sewing, first time ever making a Halloween costume, and I think it's pretty good. It's nowhere near perfect. It's definitely not the quality. I wish I had more time. I wish I had more money. Yeah, I'm excited. Alright, so the costume is done. Now it's time to just add a few accessories. Stay tuned for my weekly videos.
Well, I'd say we're about done here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.